I woke up on a Tuesday morning and found out I was a prisoner on my own land. No storm, no flood, no fallen tree across the drive. Just an 8-foot brick wall standing where my gravel driveway meets the road. Neat as you please, mortar still light gray and drying in the sun like it was proud of itself. For a minute, I honestly thought I was still half dreaming. I stood there in my boots, coffee going cold in my hand, staring at it the way you stare at a magic trick you didn't ask to see. Then I noticed the sign bolted right into the brick, clean white background, black letters sharp as a judge's gavel. Private wall installation. Approved by Stonebridge Estates HOA. That's when the coffee stopped tasting like coffee. See, I don't live in Stonebridge Estates. I never have. I never signed anything, never paid a dime, never agreed to manicured shrubs or matching mailboxes or whatever else comes with those places. My house sits on 12 acres that used to belong to my Uncle Ray, long before Stonebridge showed up with their gated entrance and their waterfall fountain lit up like a casino every night. My place is different. Gravel drive, tin roof, red barn that leans just a little in a hard wind but still stands. An old Ford pickup from '88 that coughs once before it turns over, like it's clearing its throat before work. Out here you hear coyotes at night and tractors in the morning. Over there, you hear leaf blowers and labradoodles. And apparently, that difference bothered them. For years, the HOA had tried to buy me out. First it was friendly. A couple in pastel polos showed up with a fruit basket and a glossy brochure showing future phases of development. They talked about community cohesion and maximizing property values and how my land was the last missing piece of their vision. I told them I was happy where I was. Then it turned less friendly. Letters started arriving. Suggestions that my barn was structurally inconsistent with neighborhood standards. Comments about how my gravel road created dust that impacted the aesthetic experience of their residents. One board member actually told me my truck was visually disruptive. Visually disruptive. That one still makes me smile. But under the polite words was something else. Pressure. They wanted my land because it sat along the only stretch connecting their fancy subdivision to Millstone Road, the main county artery. Without that stretch, their exclusive community had one narrow exit they shared with a neighboring development, and traffic backed up every morning like a clogged artery. I said no every time. Not because I'm stubborn, though I am. Not because I hate new houses, though they all kind of look the same to me. I said no because this land isn't just dirt. It's where my uncle taught me how to rebuild a carburetor using nothing but patience and a roll of duct tape. It's where we buried 3 dogs under the oak tree out back. It's where I scattered his ashes on a quiet morning with no wind. You don't sell that because someone waves a check. Still, I figured the worst they could do was keep pestering me. I didn't figure they'd build a wall. I walked the length of it that morning, boots crunching over fresh chips of brick. It ran straight across the mouth of my driveway and extended a few feet on either side like it was making a statement. Whoever built it worked fast. No notice, no letter, no knock on the door, just bricks. I called the number on the sign. It rang twice before a crisp voice answered. Stonebridge Estates Management Office. Yeah, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. This is Daniel Harper. I live at the end of Red Clay Lane. There's a brick wall blocking my driveway. A pause. Paper shuffling. Keyboard tapping. Oh yes, Mr. Harper. The board voted unanimously to install that barrier due to ongoing concerns about safety and property value preservation. Safety. I looked at my empty stretch of land. You built a wall across my only access point. It's within the development's perimeter expansion. I'm not in your development. Another pause, longer this time. Then the voice softened, in that way people do when they think you just don't understand. Our survey indicates the road access falls under Stonebridge oversight. That's when something cold slid down my spine. Because that road they were talking about, the stretch that connected my driveway to Millstone Road, used to be public decades ago. Abandoned by the county when they rerouted traffic. For years it just sat there, cracked asphalt and weeds pushing through. 5 years ago, when taxes got tight and I wanted to make sure nobody could cut through my land without asking, I went to a county auction and bought that strip outright. Quietly. Legally. Deed in my safe. Taxes paid every year since. Which meant one thing. They hadn't built that wall on their land. They'd built it on mine. I hung up without another word and walked back inside. Pulled the deed from the metal lockbox under my bed. Spread it across the kitchen table smoothing the paper with my palm like it might disappear if I didn't hold it down. Then I called the sheriff's office. Deputy Collins showed up an hour later, hat tipped back, chewing gum slow like he was trying to stretch the morning out. He'd been out here before for nothing more serious than checking on a loose cow. He stood in front of the wall, hands on his hips, and let out a low whistle. "Well," he said, "that's new." I handed him the deed. He read it carefully, eyes moving line by line. He looked back at the wall, then at me. "You want us to tear it down?" I took a breath, felt the anger sitting there, heavy and hot. But under it was something else. A memory of every letter they'd sent, every condescending smile, every suggestion that I was in the way of progress. "No," I said finally. "I've got a better idea." He studied me for a second, like he was trying to decide if he should be worried. "What kind of idea?" I looked at that wall again, at the neat bricks and the smug little sign. The kind that teaches a lesson. And that was the morning I stopped being the quiet neighbor at the edge of Stonebridge Estates and started becoming a problem they hadn't planned for. Deputy Collins gave me that slow side eye like he wasn't sure whether to laugh or radio somebody. But he didn't argue. He just handed the deed back and said, "Whatever you do, Daniel, keep it legal." "That's the plan," I told him. And I meant it. See, I'm not the type to swing first. I'll take a lot before I push back. But once you shove me into a corner on my own land, I start reading fine print. I spent that afternoon on the phone with a surveyor I trusted, a woman named Carla Mendoza who'd done boundary work for my uncle years back. Carla doesn't guess. She measures twice and then measures again because she doesn't like being wrong. She came out the next morning with her tripod and bright orange flags, moving slow and deliberate along the edge of that brick masterpiece. I stood there with my arms crossed while she checked coordinates against county records. After about 40 minutes, she straightened up, pulled off her sunglasses, and looked at me with a half smile. "They missed," she said. "By how much?" "Enough." Turns out the wall wasn't just on my road strip. It cut almost 3 feet into my property line. 3 feet might not sound like much, but when you're talking about land rights, 3 feet is the difference between a fence and a lawsuit. I thanked her, paid her, and asked for the report in writing. By that evening, I had copies printed and scanned. Then I called an old friend of mine, Earl Simmons. Earl runs a welding shop about 20 miles out. We graduated high school together, and he's the kind of guy who thinks most problems can be improved with steel. I told him what happened. There was a long silence on the line. Then he started laughing, low and dangerous. "They built a wall," he said. "Sure did." "On your road." "Sure did." He laughed again. "You finally gonna stop being polite?" "I'm gonna stay polite," I said. "I'm just gonna get creative." We met at the property that afternoon. Earl walked the length of the wall, tapping a brick here and there like he was inspecting a horse's teeth. "You know," he said, "if they want a barrier, we could give them a proper one." That's when the idea started taking shape. At the far end of the wall, just before it stopped, there was a clean break where my road continued straight toward Millstone. Their contractors had assumed that stretch belonged to the development, so they left it open, probably planning to extend landscaping later. Instead, Earl and I measured that gap. 14 feet wide. "Cattle gate?" he asked. "Big one," I said. By the end of the week, Earl had fabricated the tallest, most unapologetic steel gate you've ever seen. 14 feet high, reinforced crossbars, heavy hinges bolted into thick steel posts. We sank deep into concrete on my side of the line. We painted it neon green. Not forest green. Not tasteful green. The kind of green you see on highway construction signs at midnight. Across the center, in clean white letters, we welded a plate that read, "Private road. No trespassing. Access by permission only." But I wasn't done. A couple years back, a small dirt racetrack outside town shut down. I remembered they had an old wooden toll booth they used during big events. I tracked down the former owner and asked what he wanted for it. "Thought I'd burn it," he said. "Why?" "I've got a better use." 2 days later, that toll booth was sitting right in the middle of the asphalt strip I owned, positioned perfectly at the mouth of Stonebridge's main exit. I bolted a simple sliding window onto it and mounted a clean sign overhead. "Toll road. Monthly access plans available." When everything was set up, I drove into town, printed laminated sheets with pricing, and tacked them neatly to the booth. Residents of Stonebridge Estates, $300 per month. Registered guests, $15 per entry. Stonebridge board members, $750 per month, non-negotiable. Now, before anyone says I was being petty, let me explain something. That road was their primary exit. Without it, they had one other way out that looped miles around through another development, adding 20 minutes to every commute. They marketed their homes as having direct millstone access. Buyers paid for that convenience. Convenience that ran straight across my land. Saturday morning, I opened the gate just enough to let myself through, then closed it behind me and took a seat inside the booth with a thermos of coffee. It didn't take long. Around 8:30, the first SUV rolled up. A woman in oversized sunglasses lowered her window halfway. "What is this?" she asked, glancing at the booth like it might be a joke. "Morning," I said. "Private toll road. $300 a month for residents." Her eyebrows shot up. "We already pay HOA dues. That's between you and them." Cars started lining up behind her. Engines idling. Confused faces peering over dashboards. I kept my voice calm, polite. Same tone I'd used every time the HOA asked me to sell. By 9, traffic was backed up past their fountain entrance. People were stepping out of vehicles, phones in hand. I saw someone filming. Then I saw him. Caleb Whitmore, president of the Stonebridge HOA. Early 40s, always dressed like he might accidentally bump into a magazine photographer. The first time he came to my door years ago, he'd called my barn a rustic inconsistency. I'd never forgotten that phrase. He marched toward the booth holding a clipboard like it was a shield. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" he snapped. I leaned back in the folding chair, took a slow sip of coffee. "Collecting tolls. You can't block access to our community." "I'm not blocking it," I said. "I'm regulating access to my private road." His jaw tightened. "That road services over 100 homes. That road," I said carefully, "is deeded to me." He waved a hand toward the wall behind us. "The board approved expansion of our perimeter." "You were notified?" "No," I said. "You built a wall across my driveway. On my land." His eyes flicked, just briefly, toward the survey flags Carla had left in place. Bright orange against the brick. "You're creating a public nuisance." "I'm creating a toll road. Happens all over the country." He leaned in closer, lowering his voice. "You're going to regret this." There it was. Not frustration. Not confusion. Threat. I stood up slowly, stepped out of the booth so we were face to face. "You boxed me in," I said quietly. "Literally. You didn't knock. You didn't ask. You just assumed I'd roll over." His expression hardened. "We're protecting property values. And I'm protecting property rights." Behind him, horns started honking. Someone shouted that they were going to be late for work. Caleb turned, clearly realizing this wasn't the clean power move he'd envisioned when they laid those bricks. He looked back at me. "This isn't over." "I know," I said. He stormed off, already dialing his phone. By noon, their secondary exit was jammed, residents frustrated, social media buzzing. My phone started lighting up too, but not the way Caleb expected. Because while he was threatening lawyers, I was preparing paperwork. I filed a formal trespassing complaint with the county, attaching Carla's survey, drone footage I'd taken of their contractors laying brick, and a copy of my deed. I mailed certified letters to every homeowner in Stonebridge, not attacking, not ranting, just laying out the facts. "Here's the property line. Here's the road ownership. Here's the cost of the wall your board approved without disclosure." And at the bottom, I added one paragraph. "If the wall is removed, a written apology issued, and damages paid, I am open to negotiating shared access terms that benefit both parties." No insults. No threats. Just terms. Because this wasn't about humiliating them. It was about reminding them that just because something looks old, or rural, or inconvenient, doesn't mean it's weak. By Sunday evening, local Facebook groups were on fire. Some residents were furious at me, but more were asking questions of their board. $85,000 had been spent from HOA reserves on that wall. No community vote. No transparent survey confirmation. And people don't like finding out their money built a mistake. Monday morning, I was back in the booth when Caleb returned, this time with 2 other board members and a man in a suit. He didn't yell this time. He just said, "We need to talk." Caleb didn't look as polished that Monday morning. Same tailored polo, same loafers that had probably never seen mud, but the edge was gone. The 2 board members behind him looked tired, and the guy in the suit kept adjusting his tie like it was choking him. I stepped out of the toll booth and closed the little sliding window behind me. "Morning," I said. Caleb didn't waste time. "This has escalated unnecessarily." I almost laughed at that, but I didn't. "Unnecessarily," I repeated. You built a wall across my only driveway. The lawyer cleared his throat. Mr. Harper, I'm representing the Stonebridge Homeowners Association. We'd like to resolve this amicably. That would have been nice before the bricks, I said. He gave a tight nod. There appears to have been a boundary misinterpretation. 3 feet of misinterpretation, I replied, plus about 80 feet of brick. Behind them, a line of cars idled again. Not as chaotic as Saturday, but tense. People were watching, waiting. Caleb folded his arms. You've made your point. That sentence told me everything. To him, this was about pride. About who blinked first. I looked past him at the homes inside Stonebridge. Big windows. Clean driveways. Lawns trimmed to the inch. I didn't hate those people. Most of them probably had no idea what their board had pulled. They just wanted to get to work and back without drama. But drama had already happened. You spent HOA money on a structure built on property you don't own, I said calmly. You blocked my legal access. You did it without notice. That's not a misunderstanding. That's overreach. The lawyer shifted. The association is prepared to remove the wall. I let that hang there for a second. And? I asked. Caleb's jaw flexed. He didn't want to say it. I could see that. And compensate you for documented damages, the lawyer finished. I tilted my head. Gate cost me money. Booth 2. Survey wasn't free. And the grass your contractors tore up will need reseeding. Will require receipts, Caleb snapped. I looked at him. Just looked. Long enough that he finally looked away. You'll get them, I said. There was a silence then, not loud, but heavy. It felt like something shifting under the surface. Not just a wall coming down, but a hierarchy adjusting. Because the truth was, Caleb wasn't evil. He was ambitious. Stonebridge was his project. His proof that he could turn empty acreage into polished prosperity. My land didn't fit that picture. It interrupted the symmetry. And instead of negotiating with the interruption, he tried to erase it. That's a mistake people in power make sometimes. They forget the ground still belongs to someone. How long? I asked. Demolition crew can be here within 48 hours, the lawyer said. And written acknowledgement of fault. Caleb hesitated. Yes. The lawyer answered before he could. I nodded once. Then we're getting somewhere. He extended his hand. I shook it. Firm, not friendly. Before they turned to leave, Caleb paused. You know, he said quietly, if you just sold when we first asked, none of this would have happened. I held his gaze. If you just respected the boundary, none of this would have either. He didn't have an answer for that. 2 days later, the same efficiency that built the wall tore it down. Bricks stacked, loaded, hauled away. Mortar dust hanging in the air like the ghost of a bad decision. I stood on my side of the property line and watched every piece disappear. Carla came back out to confirm restoration. The grass was reseeded. Soil leveled. Clean. A week after that, an envelope arrived certified mail. Inside was a formal apology from the Stonebridge HOA acknowledging unauthorized construction, along with a check covering the gate fabrication, booth installation, survey costs, landscaping repair, and a little extra labeled as goodwill. 2 weeks later, Caleb Whitmore resigned as HOA president. I didn't celebrate. Not out loud anyway. Because here's the thing nobody tells you about winning a fight like that. It doesn't feel like fireworks. It feels quiet. Satisfying, sure. But mostly steady. Like resetting something that tilted too far. The toll booth is still there. The gate too. I keep it open most days now. Residents pass through without stopping. We eventually drafted a shared access agreement. Modest annual fee paid directly to me for road maintenance. Transparent. Signed. Recorded. No more surprises. Sometimes I'll be sitting on the porch in the evening and watch their headlights roll past the edge of my property. I don't feel anger anymore. Just awareness. Boundaries matter. Not just fence lines and deeds and survey pins, but the invisible ones too. The line between progress and entitlement. Between community and control. There were people in Stonebridge who thought I was a villain. Some probably still do. The stubborn country guy who made their morning commute complicated for a week. But others stopped by afterward. Introduced themselves. Apologized for something they didn't personally do. One older couple even brought over a pie. Turns out when you strip away the board politics and the polished branding, most folks just want fairness. Caleb tried to protect property values. That was his motivation. In his mind, I was a threat to the clean lines of his development. My barn, my truck, my gravel road, they didn't match the brochure. And maybe he convinced himself that pushing me out was for the greater good. But property value isn't the same as property rights. And that lesson cost him $85,000 and a presidency. Every now and then I walk down to the edge of Millstone Road and stand where the wall used to be. There's no sign it was ever there. Just open space and the faint seam in the asphalt where my road begins. It would have been easy to call the sheriff and have the wall demolished immediately. Clean, quick, quiet. But if I'd done that, nothing would have changed except a stack of bricks. By building that gate, by setting up that booth, I forced a conversation. Not just with Caleb, but with the whole neighborhood. About who owns what. About how decisions get made. About what happens when a small group assumes they can redefine someone else's boundaries. And I'll be honest, there was a part of me that enjoyed the irony. The visually disruptive truck owner running a toll booth in front of a luxury subdivision. There's humor in that if you look for it. But deeper than that was something else. A shift in me. For years I'd kept to myself. Avoided meetings. Ignored letters. Thought staying quiet was the same as staying safe. It isn't. Silence doesn't protect you from overreach. It just makes you easier to overlook. Now, when something doesn't sit right, I speak up early. Calm. Direct. Documented. Because I learned that week that defending your ground doesn't make you difficult. It makes you present. So here's the question I keep coming back to, and I'm curious what you think. Was I justified in how far I took it? Should I have just filed a complaint and left it at that? Or was the toll booth the right kind of message? Where's the line between standing up for yourself and escalating a conflict? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I really want to hear how you see it. And if you've ever dealt with an HOA, a neighbor, or anyone who thought they could redraw your boundaries without asking, share that too. Because sometimes the road under your wheels isn't as public as you think. And sometimes the quiet neighbor at the edge of the map owns more than you realize. If this story meant something to you, hit like, subscribe, and stick around. There are more lessons buried in ordinary places than most people ever notice.